We are live. I didn't realize. So, what I wanted to talk about today is if I was to audit your, let me just move this mic. If I was to audit your Google Ad account, what would I find? What do I look for when I go in and start poking around, looking for recommendations, optimizations, things that we could potentially do a little bit differently? So, the first thing I'm doing is I'm just going to go around the account. I'm going to look at the structure of the account itself and get some understanding to, first of all, what's working. Most accounts, something's going to work. The chances are, even if you kind of throw a dart at the board, you're going to hit the dartboard most of the time. And it's same with Google, something's going to work. So I'm going to look at what's working, and then we're going to look at what isn't working. So potentially, if there's a budget running, then are we making sure that that budget is relevant for the campaign? Looking at the ad groups, the structure of the campaign, is it running in such a way that we can optimize that? And when I say optimize it, what I'm looking at is um, whoever's running the account, are they adding negative keywords in? Are they sculpting the ad groups to make sure that the keywords or the negative keywords, the keywords are going to the right ad groups? And you do this through negative keyword sculpting, which means that you're making sure that the traffic goes to the right ad group if they've got multiple ad groups. And then it's just understanding if they've got a search campaign alongside, say, a PMAX campaign, or if they're an e-commerce store, and if they've got a shopping running with a PMAX, we need to make sure by going through the data points that we're optimizing and they're getting the very best performance. So potentially what I see, mistakes, if we're going to a shopping campaign, I see very little in the sense of optimization. Feeds just running through sort of 400 or 500 different SKUs and no segmentation. So we need to make sure with anything e-commerce, the chances are you're not going to sell every product within your store online because it's just too many. So what we need to do is we need to get that data, we need to segment it or break it into a second shopping campaign. That's something, again, that works very well. And then potentially we can then look at adding in PMAX campaigns once we understand what's going on with the shopping campaign. Titles, very, very important with shopping campaigns. Again, very little in the way of optimization that I see. But again, what we need to do is look at the search terms that are triggering, and then we can see, look at the competitors, look at the actual titles that are being seen within the shopping campaign, and then we can optimize our titles. And then if we're sticking on the e-commerce side of things, let's talk about the tracking. So never has it been so fucking easy to set up tracking than it has been right now. You as advertisers, you as agency owners have no excuse not to set up tracking correctly. Now, what am I talking about? So normally when you set up tracking, you can do it through the tag manager. So you go into tag manager and you set up the tracking that way. But if you're not technically minded or don't really want to do that, then you can get a third-party software, which you should be using anyway, something like a Simprosy. So it's Simprosy. You can buy that literally. It's a couple of coffees for the price of a month, and then they'll help you with your feed that runs through your WooCommerce, as an example, to your merchant center, and then from your merchant center that runs back into Google. You connect everything up, Google Analytics, your Google Ads, and then once that's all connected, you've got the feed running through. Then you can look at optimizing the titles. Again, Simprosy, a very good support based on what I've seen. I've got a number of e-commerce clients who use Simprosy. Fantastic for the price that you pay for it, where everybody's charging a lot of money. These guys are actually pretty much on the ball. On top of that, we can then create the purchase tracking within the back end of the website, which will then send that data back to Google, create the conversion tracking for a purchase. You can create the add to cart as well as a secondary event, because obviously we want to be tracking as many data points as possible. We can do that with just a few clicks of a button. How easy is that? So it doesn't get any more simple than that. So it's Simprosy, get your feed running through if you're starting out with your e-commerce journey. And then on top of that, you can then literally create your purchase event, which you need to give Google AI an understanding of what you want as an advertiser. So on top of that, what am I actually looking at when I go into a Google Ad account? Well, most of the time it's like I'm looking at the amount of campaigns that are running. Generally, I'm simplifying accounts. Just Google is not, whatever platform you're using, and I say this because I see this in Facebook as well. You do not need multiple campaigns with multiple ad groups anymore with multiple ads. You need to simplify it for Facebook Meta, and we need to do the same for our Google ad account. So if you're starting off with search campaigns and you're adding in more search campaigns, ask yourself the question, and whenever you do anything with your campaigns, ask yourself the question, why are you doing what you're doing? So if you're adding negative keywords, why are you doing that? Well, because it's irrelevant and Google's wasting money, then that's absolutely fine. If you're an agency and you're doing it for your client, if your client was to phone you tonight or speak to you in the morning and ask you, and unfortunately, not enough clients ask their Google ad account, the people who manage their account, what they're doing. Because sometimes I go into accounts and I have no freaking idea what is going on. Nothing makes sense. Things are broken. Um, Let me clarify something. If you're the way you set up a e-commerce account to a lead generation account is going to be different because it's different ways of setting them up. Obviously, with lead generation, I tend to start with a search campaign. With e-commerce, you can start with a search and then bring in a shopping, or shopping and then bring in a PMAX. There's a number of different strategies, but with a e-commerce, the metrics are slightly different. The way we can set this up is very different. But what I get frustrated is when I see a lack of understanding, big budgets being spent, lack of understanding of structure, and then on top of that, there was just no fundamentals there to scale the campaign. Now, what is scaling? Scaling is where you've got two things. You can either put more money into a current campaign that's working, and then in the hopes, and I say this tongue in cheek, and I'm going to explain this, in the hopes that you'll make more money or more revenue. That's the first thing. Now, if you're doing everything right and your metrics are coming back good, and you look at the search impressions and you see that you've got a low search impression, well, with confidence, I would say you can very easily add budget and get more conversions. Why? Because you're already getting data and you've got a low search impression. By adding budget, 20% increments, you can then take more search impressions, which will give you more conversions moving forward. The principle applies to e-commerce as it does to lead generation. It doesn't make a difference. When I tell a client that they can scale, when they can add budget, I'm saying it with a degree of confidence. Why? Well, first of all, I know what I'm doing. And number two, I've set the campaigns up for scaling. So when we're setting up campaigns, we've got to understand how we're setting them up, why we're setting them up. Are these scalable? And if you've set them up correctly, then yes, the chances are that you can get these campaigns to scale, which is either adding more budget to then take more search impression share. If you're finding that you've got a lot of search impression share, or you started to raise the budget and you started to see your CPCs, again, you should be knowing the metrics. CPCs are rising, then potentially you've hit a CPC resistance. So then what you potentially could do was, as an example, if you're running a search campaign, you could then start a Performance Max campaign. Performance Max campaigns work fantastically well with lead generation. Yeah, there's some things that we need to do, but one of the things is make sure with a PMax, you exclude your brand. If your brand is not with Google, then it takes 4 to 6 weeks to make sure you've added your brand in, to make sure you can exclude your brand, because you don't want to be targeting your brand, which is your company name, in both a search campaign and a PMax campaign. It makes no sense. So exclude it from one placement. This is where the crossover and the understanding comes into. We do not want to be targeting the same thing. So by taking away your brand from the PMax, then your brand would only be seen in the search campaign. Other things that I'm looking at, tracking I've mentioned. We're talking about how we set up the campaigns for scaling. But on top of that, the way that we structure the campaigns, we want to make sure that we're staying away from phrase. Now, I'm not sure why I still see so many accounts either run from individuals. Individuals I get, but I don't understand with agencies who are supposed to be the experts, why they're still using phrase. It makes no sense to me, because if you understand Google, you know that to tap into all the beautiful things within a Google ad account, to tap into the AI, to tap into AI overviews, we need to make sure that we're structuring the account in a certain way. That is by adding in broad or using Performance Max campaigns. We'll make sure that you don't get a reduction in clicks and impressions by not being seen in the AI overviews. So AI overviews is just another placement that Google has brought in like a search engine within the platform. We want to be making sure that we're being seen in those search engines, the AI overviews and AI mode. And like I said, the way you do that is by adding in broad. Broad will send you a load of crap traffic. Yeah, absolutely it will. But how do we control that? We can add in scripts for negative keywords. We can actually go in and do some work and optimize the campaigns to make sure that we're taking away those irrelevant search terms that are going to waste us money. It's very simple to do. It takes a bit of time, but yes, there are a number of things that we can do. So broad taps into a number of placements, but also picks up new terms. Google are saying there's a very sort of 10-15% new terms are being created every week. So we want to make sure if we've got broad, we're tapping into those. As terms get created, as terms get converted into conversions, again, lead generation or e-commerce, we add those in as exact. Why do we do that? Because it's the closest variant to what's working right now. I can't stress this enough. There's a massive misunderstanding in my community, probably because it's not regulated, and people just don't understand how to run Google Ads. They just don't seem to sort of know what's working right now. And it's quite frustrating because it's not that complicated. It just needs some basic understanding to get the very best for you or your client, and also to make sure that you're being seen in as many places as possible, and you're not wasting your client's money or your money if you're running your Google Ads. I understand if you're doing it yourself, necessarily you're trying to run a business, and you're trying to optimize your Google Ad account. You think you've watched a YouTube video from a year and a half ago by somebody who said that you need to just use phrase, and not doesn't really have an understanding for what's working right now. I've seen certain people with massive followings giving completely wrong advice, and that's one of the reasons I started providing education, because I was sick and tired of going into, and still I go into accounts now and it drives me up the wall. I'm like, why is this account set up this way? Or potentially they've come away from another agency and it's a bit of a mess. Just a practice that doesn't work. Phrase match and no optimization and no understanding, and just a mismatch, tracking not working, and just, we still need to do, this is still a job. I think we need to understand that Google is still a job and it still needs to be worked upon. Everything we do, if we go to the gym, when I go to the gym, I'm still working on trying to maintain what I've got, physique wise, and Google's the same. We're trying to, lift heavier weights to grow, and Google as well is the same. We need to make sure that we're continually working hard to sculpt the campaign to grow, to lower our cost per conversion, and just to continually grow the campaign. So they're some of the things that I'm looking, probably the major things that I'm looking at within a Google Ad account, which are quite simple, but you've got to have a good structure. You've got to understand that the structure will set you up for success, for you to be the very best at what you're doing based on the data that you're seeing. So understand the metrics is very, very important. If you want to make more, if you want to scale a campaign, then you need to know how to do that. And the ways I'm telling you are some of the most up-to-date ways. Now, potentially this might be wrong in 3-6 months, but right now, this is what's working. And I would urge you to start to restructure your campaigns based on what I'm saying, because it's what's working. We're smashing it. We're beating the competition quite easily, but it's not difficult once you know how. And I would highly recommend that you get your campaigns up to speed and ask yourself the question, why are you doing what you're doing? And if you can answer that either for yourself or for your client, you'll have a better understanding of your Google Ad account based on 2026 and what's working right now.